Okay, look, I just want to make this a quick one. So one thing that I deal with a lot is people, when I sort of say, okay, well, the current system in South Africa isn't working. So they'll say federalism, right? So federalism is supposed to be the solution to all of our problems because you have devolution, but then you don't have to do with any scary changes like breaking up the country. So for me, this sounds like one of those kind of silly compromises where people think they can have their cake and eat it too. Like, oh, we don't have to have any divisive ideas in society. We don't have to have any confrontations or awkward conversations. We can have a happy kumbaya moment and solve all of the intractable problems that make South Africa one of the worst countries, worst sort of political systems in the world. So, yeah, why is federalism stupid? Well, the obvious answer is that you can only get federalism by reforming the constitution. Okay, you can break parts of the country off through exertion of local power, but you can't do that for creating a new national system. To get a new national system, like federalism, you'd need to have negotiation between a unit. You'd have to have basic consensus amongst all elites, amongst all major intermediary sectors of society, amongst all major organizations. They need to be able to sit down and hammer out a new constitution effectively. Now, you could say, oh, no, it's much simpler. We'll just add an amendment to the constitution. No, there's huge sections of the constitution that would need to be rewritten, right? And for that, you need a 2/3 majority in parliament. 2/3 majority in parliament. So I was like, what are you doing? Where are you going to get this 2/3 majority from? So people imagine, okay, well, the DA's got federalism on their agenda, so we'll just go with them and we'll vote for them. But what kind of federalism do the DA want? Well, the DA are sort of they take their instructions from a network of politicians in Germany, in the UK, and in America, right? So they have a lot of people like this write their policy, right? They rely on these foreign consultants that are attached to various political parties, like the Democratic Party in the US, the Conservative Party in the UK, and the Free Democrats in Germany. So they've got these little connections, and those people write policies for them. So like the idea of federalism they're going to come up with is maybe a couple of like competencies. It's very good. But let's look at what happens when they actually have the opportunity to do this. Because at the moment, it's just a promise. And the only way that they could actually deliver this in any sort of way that they would like, because they're absolute control freaks, the DA. They're terrified of doing any process they don't control. So it means that they also don't challenge power either very directly. So that's why they failed in the GNU. But there's other details to that are strange. Let's just talk quickly about what are the opportunities for devolution the DA have, and they're all in the Western Cape. So the first opportunity that they presented that they were aware of was the need for devolving electrical generation. Now we know that they can actually do this, demonstrated by the fact that they're actually doing it now. But so when was this problem apparent? Well, we started having blackouts in 2008. And when the DA got into government in 2009, they immediately sort of set about trying to fix things in their own little way. And Alan Winde at the time was in the, I think it's like the Office of Economic Development, some stupid, all of these names of departments. I like the way the Victorians did it. It's like, well, the Ministry of War, you know what that department does. Nowadays, it's a Department of Human Settlements, as opposed to what? Ant colonies? Anyway. But so he was in charge of the economic department. I'm terrible with these silly technical terms. Anyway, the provincial department of economic development. So he was tasked with reforming it. And the first thing he says is, well, we want to generate power privately because we need to. The blackouts are a problem. They're only going to get worse. It's 2009, remember? 14 years ago. 14, 15 years ago. 16 years ago, actually. So he goes there and he says, well, this is what we need. And the DA hierarchy tell him, no, you can't do this. Okay. You have to trust the ANC will sort this out. Okay. And so where did they actually get their arse in gear? Well, I think it's like 2 or 3 years ago. They start sorting things out to generate electricity in the province. Alan Winde has been trying his hardest to get this kind of stuff sorted, right? And it's only when he got into becoming the premier that you actually started to get the ball moving on electrical development. Now, Alan Winde, he's silly in a lot of ways. He takes Lazard's levelized per unit, unit cost of energy analysis at face value. He's a very simple sort of like liberal corporate, line go up, that means good. Do not interrogate the numbers that go into line go up. But he means well. He's an unimaginative milquetoast corporate liberal, but he's he does actually mean well, and he actually wants to fix problems. The trouble is he's not very popular in the party. He has his own little faction way off to the side. He's allowed to run the Western Cape, but they don't like him up there in the FedEx. The FedEx sort of meddles in provincial affairs through Anton Bredell and a couple of other individuals like Jaco Lont and so on. But generally speaking, Alan Winde is part of a separate faction that has very sort of contained ambitions and usually works through Westgrow to achieve things through the private sector rather than reaching up to national networks. The people who are running the DA who run the DA at the national level are actually the people around Tony Leon. And what they did when it was time to devolve, when the Cape Independence movement came about, is they were suddenly reminded by their own supporters and several people inside the party that they have this federalist thing on their manifesto. And so the Cape Independence Party sort of comes up, well, not the Cape Independence Party, the Cape Independence Movement, I should say, approaches them, and we force them into this, together with AfriForum and like Action Society, Ian Cameron, who wasn't part of the D at the time. So the movement kind of gets them to be part of this committee called the Western Cape Devolution Working Group. And I wrote a big report for them that for some reason nobody read. I was paid to do it, but like nobody's read this document. It's like 99 pages of like obscure policy details, and it's on my blog somewhere on my Substack. There's like a Dropbox link to the file. But the thing is, there was like a whole bunch of areas where they could have devolved power, and they just didn't. And so what we did is we proposed, look, well, you want federalism, we want secession, but we're willing to compromise. This is the gambit, right? As we move them along gradually. So we pitch this to them and say, well, look, here's the Western Cape People's Bill. We're going to leverage these 3 treaties that the ANC signed in the 90s, these elements of the Constitution, and so on and so forth, and basically say that we have the right to have our own autonomy because we, the people of the Western Cape, are a people in our own right. Right? There's this sort of gambit, and legally and on paper, it's great. It works. So the thing is, they weren't even willing to try that because, of course, they were planning to go into coalition with the ANC and they didn't want to rock the boat. But this is stupid thinking. If you really want to actually have power in that negotiation, you have to create leverage for yourself. You don't, if you're going into negotiation with your enemy, you add pressure. How did the ANC negotiate the settlement in 94? By bombing, murdering, massacring people. But when the negotiation started in 1990, they ramped up the violence. It accelerated to a level never before seen. That was when they were at their most violent, to keep the pressure up during negotiations. It's a good strategy. How did they deal with the IFP when the IFP wanted to boycott the election? Well, Nelson Mandela ordered them to kill all of the protesters in the streets. They killed 50 of them, and he did so with utter impunity, right? And that allowed him to tell IFP, you will not win this battle. We have the backing of the state, even though we're not in power yet. Go fuck yourself. Okay? This is how you negotiate in a system like South Africa, right? And the old Afrikaners understood this. The new Afrikaners are, well, I don't know what they're doing. I think that there's a reason that a lot of Afrikaners are frustrated with solidarity. When you watch Boer media, those guys they're about to have a conniption. Every new crisis, and it's like, well, where's solidarity? Where's their next big move? You can see people are getting antsy, right? because the way you play power in this country is not the same way as you play power in England or the Netherlands, whatever, with your polite negotiation and like legalistic moves. No, you have to apply some force. So the leverage the DA needed to actually go into this coalition and say something is the Western Cape. They needed to have control of the Western Cape. They haven't got it, right? They've got control of the provincial government, but the provincial government controls very little. They turned down the one opportunity they had, and they went out of their way to prevent it from happening. And I'll tell you quickly how it happened. Now, this is everyone in the independence movement knows this story. So basically what happens is Phil Craig writes this bill. It gives the province the power to take back control of pretty much any sphere of government it likes, except for certain constitutional categories like military, customs, immigration, so they wouldn't be able to take control of home affairs or anything. It'd be like there's a whole bunch of different things they could take control of, though, like transport, policing, so on, right? They have a right to it, a full legal right. And, it would give them control of their budget as well. I mean, there's like a lot of things that you could do. So what the DA start panicking because this bill is about to go on the floor, and it was delivered onto the floor by Peter Marais. Now, Peter Marais is retired now, and his son's in his place as the provincial leader of the Vryheidsfront in the Western Cape. But Peter Marais is an old-coloured conservative, right, who has been hardcore for Cape independence since the fucking 1980s. He's probably the earliest mover on this of anyone. Well, he's too old now. He's very old. He's well in his 80s. I mean, he used to flip-flop through a lot of parties, but I remember there was an interview he gave where he said, like, I'm asked this a lot, and he says, I am trying to get to the Cape, and I'm getting on a bus, and if the bus isn't taking me to the Cape, I'm getting off that bus. And so, this is a guy who's dedicated his whole life to this, and his final move as a member of provincial parliament was to put this bill on the thing. This is the people's bill. It still has to be voted on. The DA have delayed it. They've delayed the bill. They won't vote against it. Right now, what happens is that the DA then go into overdrive trying to write their own bill that would be toothless, that the ANC could then make a stink about so that it looks like the DA have done something, but they've done nothing. And that bill is called the Western Cape Provincial Powers Bill. All that bill does is it says that the provincial government should look for ways in which power could be devolved and to ask politely of the ANC to devolve them to the province. How did that go? Well, Jordan Hill-Lewis has been trying really hard to get the rail devolved to the province. But, to the city, actually. For some reason, devolving it to the province seems a bit sort of tall order, because people are worried that now this is going to empower political division that has the capacity for separatism. So he's been, the DA has been forced to curtail their ambitions to Cape Town, and then even there, the ANC are kind of quibbling, and they want to dictate a whole bunch of terms. So that's not going very far. And then policing, what they've done is they've actually subordinated the Metro Police to SAPS. They've given up power. So they kind of move sideways and they don't really do much. So they don't really have the ambition to take the powers that they even advertise that they need to. And what they're telling you is that, yeah, you'll get your federalism once we're the outright majority party. I mean, you understand how stupid this is. They're never going to get more than a quarter of the vote, right? So you've got about 15 to 20% of the population are minorities. You got maybe 5% of the black population who vote for the DA at the best of times. And it's this like little block of this narrow band of middle class, middle-aged black South Africans who come from a very specific era of the Model C school system that it's broken now. My generation are all being brought up as rabid Azanian sort of nationalists, right? So this is not going to last. This is a single cohort, a limited cohort from which they can draw, right? In the black community, no one else is going to vote for them. They've got a smattering of black people from other classes, but it's not a lot of them. So middle-aged, middle-class Black South Africans, and a smattering of other Black South Africans, and then minorities. So they've got this hard cap on their vote. And this is why if you look at any kind of any chart of elections that go back to 94, the minority block is flat and the Charterist block is flat, and the Zulus are sort of declined and then a recent recovery. Right? Those are your three blocks: Zulu, minoritarian, Charterist. And Charterist is, all the parties that come out of the Freedom Charter: ANC, PAC, EFF, MK, ATM. All of those are Charterist parties, right? So we've got Charterists, nationalists, Black nationalists, Charterists, Zulu nationalists, and minoritarians, liberals. And those blocks don't really change much. They haven't changed at all. They've lost at most 5% since their peak. Oh, Robert King over here. Your sense of humor both gives me hope and despair at the same time. We don't need federalism or Cape independence because Helen Zille is going to become mayor of Joburg. Trust the plan. Now, I believe it was you who, in a phone call recently, mentioned Robert King, who's in the comments there, who mentioned to me recently it might not be the worst thing of all for Helen Zille to go into Joburg because she'll have to accept defeat up there, which I agree. She's not going to fix it unless she purges the entire civil service for the city and replaces them wholesale with a bunch of professional Swiss administrators. You'd literally have to basically fire every single person in the civil service and bring in like a private admin group. I think they did this in Jakarta, actually. I don't know if Helen Zille did this, it would be unbelievably based, but she's not going to do it. She's not going to get away with it. So yeah, you'd have to basically replace them with a private company, and then you'd husband in a whole bunch of people who'd then learn on the job as apprentices to these Swiss people who'd break their balls. Anyway, but it would take the DA's only serious player off the chessboard. And who are we left with? We're left with socialists who believe that it is their right to command the private economy through Gleichschaltung, like Leon Schreiber. So Leon Schreiber is a Fabian socialist. So he believes that that you create socialism by imposing central coordination on the private sector through public-private partnerships. So when you hear people talking about public-private partnerships, this is the philosophy of the third way. It's a system of government where you, much like fascism actually is where it comes from. And I say this in a completely neutral way. I don't want to sort of like do this thing of like, oh, it comes from fascism, therefore it's bad, or therefore it's good, or whatever the fuck. I'm saying this sort of idea came up big time during the interwar period. So Keynes is a big Maynard Keynes is a big proponent of public-private partnerships. Theodore Roosevelt was a big proponent. Mussolini was big. The Germans, they called it Gleichschaltung, right? So this is a big sort of interwar period thing, and it's become actually the dominant philosophy of government after the Cold War. And the public-private partnerships third way is articulated as the vision of the future by a guy called Anthony Giddens. Fabians, the Fabian Society. It's probably the oldest successful political movement on the planet. They were founded in 1884 by Beatrice and Sidney Webb and what's that bugger? Shaw. What's it? Shaw, the playwright, S-H-A-W. What's his first name? Can't remember. Doesn't matter. And then the pedophile and inventor of transgenderism, Havelock Ellis. Maynard Shaw? No. Bernard Shaw. George Bernard Shaw. That's the bugger's name. Maynard Keynes, George Bernard Shaw, different people. You've got your wires crossed. But yeah, so Havelock Ellis, George Bernard Shaw, and the Webbs, they come up with a society that they're socially affiliated with the Marx family, but they don't, and they're big fans of Marxism, but they don't actually sort of form a vision that is Marxist in nature. And over time, they, as friendly as they are with Marxists and sort of Soviet communism throughout the 20th century, they don't actually sort of embody it. So anyway, that's and the main sort of leader of this movement as a whole would be Tony Blair, and they're very pragmatic. I mean, they're not the lower downs are obviously very ideological, but the real power players are very pragmatic. So you get Tony Blair, and you'll notice that he'll actually say a lot of sensible stuff like, green policies are actually hurting the economy, and we need to stop doing that. Or immigration is destabilizing. We need to get control of this. But the digital ID stuff and everything. This is Leon Schreiber's big into this. He's a huge fan of Tony Blair, and he thinks Tony Blair is the absolute bee's knees. Ashok Sarappan is very similar. He's a very, very sharp guy, and he doesn't betray his political vision, but he's very left wing by all accounts. And he doesn't like Whitey very much. But it's typical for the DA. I mean, the DA attracts a lot of non-white people who both want white recognition and resent it. And you see this over and over again. But I'm getting way off topic. This is about federalism, right? So again, it's about you can't capture the center, and the center is where you're going to have to devolve it from. So you have to create this uniform system across the entire country. It doesn't work. What you can do, it's much more practical to sort of get control of a province or a municipality or a piece of private land. I mean, de facto, we do have federalism, right? We have, I think, 3 or 4 actual white settlements in South Africa. It's like Kleinfontein and Eureka and Orania. Orania is obviously the most serious one. Kleinfontein and Eureka and like places like that, they're not all that serious. They're sort of like, middle class only or mainly retirement communities. It doesn't have like a good cross-cut, demographic cross-cut through the age groups and so on to produce something. Orania is the one that's really got the future, but you need to have another one on the coast. There's a long, complicated reason why you've got to examine that whole thing. But this is the federalism we have, is white enclave settlements like this, right? And then you've got, on the other hand, African traditional settlements, which have about a third of the population live in traditional government regions. And that, again, that's about 13% of the land, but 30% of the population. This is some of the most fertile agricultural land. It's very poor, very underdeveloped. The chiefs, they have this sort of profound level lack of self-confidence, and they know that they're the past. And I always feel like if you could get like an ambitious young chief to sort of go and say, well, actually, I'm gonna be the best guy in the country, and I'm going to develop my own region, partner with some ambitious sort of rural Anglo businessman types. You could have a very, very stout shift in political consciousness by pressing on that trajectory. But yeah, basically we do have federalism, but it's like this ad hoc federalism, and it's organic. And you have to sort of look at it in this way: is this is how partition functions. Is you find places where you can take power back, and you just ratchet it up. I mean, there's whole swathes of Cape Town which are not governed by the rule of law at all. They're governed by local gangs. Okay, and this you have to be seeing as the breaking up of sovereignty. The areas controlled by AfriForum and the Solidarity Network, they are in a sense devolved, right? That is, they don't rely on the government for anything except paperwork, really. Okay, so Yeah, and Robert King points out that strictly speaking, and I think it's good that he qualified with that. South Africa considers a system of provinces considered quasi-federal as a model of federalism, but without the levels of local autonomy generally associated with federalism. Correct. It's like provinces, and the government's working to undo this with something called the district development. What's it called? District development model. I mean, this is very obscure, but it is something to be worried about, because basically what they're going to do is they're going to break up the country into without changing the constitution or the laws or anything else, just pure on the policy level and intergovernmental organizational level. So it makes it makes COGTA then actually the most powerful element of government, right? This is the idea: is that you concentrate power under COGTA, and you you have vertical collaboration between national, provincial, and local at the district level, and you have 50 districts, right? And then these 50 districts will have the entire sort of infrastructural procurement systems will be vertically integrated. And so it's an indirect way of basically placing the entire country under central administration. You understand? So, you get that thing where they place a municipality under national or provincial administration based on, performance and capability and so on, right? And this happened to, and so the idea is to do this across the country, vertically integrated. Everyone's got to sit and agree the policies at the same committee. Now, the DA is not going to push back against it. They're not just going to say like, oh, we're not going to attend the committees. No. They're going to behave. They're going to collaborate. And they're going to try and sort of, we're gonna fight them from within these committees. We're gonna make sure it works. You just strengthen the new mechanism. So I mean, I have to actually at some point I have to go and check up on how the 3 pilot projects are doing, because there have been 3 districts where they've been piloting this, maybe see whether the DA have played any role in this whatsoever. I don't know if they have. They probably haven't, because they've picked 3 areas that are very deep ANC controlled. But the idea of sort of decentralizing power, it means at this point we've grabbed as much power as we can without sort of taking risks, right? We're simply absorbing all of the free, low-hanging fruit. And if we want to actually devolve power further, we're going to have to take risks and take decisive action. And the reason I say that decisive action is because, like, at a tangible level, it's going to mean actually challenging the authority of the law. And there are some workarounds you can do in the private sector regarding employment equity. There's a way that you can actually frustrate the enforcement of a lot of these policies, because the Paja Act sort of allows you some wiggle room for a lot of things. So the understanding is basically that they can't just arbitrarily impose a policy. The arbitrary imposition of given policy is it's not possible. If you want to, you have to give reason, and what that does is it allows people the ability to appeal almost any administrative decision. So if you're in the private sector and you're dealing with employment equity, you're going to have to, across large swathes of the country, you're going to have to do the NEASA business of, they want to see your BEE status. Well, just submit a form saying, and you just write sort of a bullshit excuse, and not one that's taking the piss, but just sort of say, tell the truth. Like, you can't find competent workers of the correct race, so we're going to stick with these guys. I mean, you don't be too blatant about it, obviously, necessarily. But I mean, if you got bigger balls, try it out, see how it works. But I mean, I've got friends. I've got a friend in industrial relations there in Atlantis, and the guys. I get a few sort of really good points about what's going on. I mean, these departments, they're really deeply underfunded. The NC doesn't put a lot of manpower work into real enforcement. A lot of the time, who's doing the enforcement on their behalf is unions. And there are ways of getting around this. So you'll hire your own workforce and unionize them, right? And those union agreements, our Labor Relations Act is very, very stark. If you can unionize your own workforce that's not representative of employment equity, there's absolutely no way that they can dislodge these people, because it's a binding bargaining agreement, right? So you do shop floor unionization of your own workers. It does introduce problems. I mean, I'm not going to lie, but it gives you people you can retain. There's this. I don't know. Otherwise, what are you going to do? But yeah, basically, there are at least two strategies for frustrating employment equity outside of the legal challenge realm. Frustrate implementation, because the budget at national level for this is 1.4 million rand. I mean, that's enough to hire like 6 entry-level interns for a year. So that's like nothing, because you know that they're not paying people at entry-level interns at that level of the office. They're paying 1 or 2 people maybe, like a nice salary. So you got like a couple of people, 3 maximum, running the enforcement for employment equity for the entire country. Can you imagine this? It's not going to work. Can't do it. So, and it's not the only place. There are a lot of other areas where just requesting clarification or asking for excuses, even if they're not going to eventually grant it, is going to massively clog up the system, right? And I mean, SARS, for example, doesn't really have the capacity to handle an enormous amount of requests like this. And they have to answer your challenges, and they have to answer your pleas and so on. So, I mean, even if you've got a really, really, really good tax record, you can always just say, like, you can just challenge the judgment against you. You can file an appeal. I mean, if half the country does this, because they can't take your money until they've processed the appeal. I mean, you would only need it. I think about. I mean, they're very reticent to publish this information, but I think if you had 500,000 people file tax appeals, at the end of the year, you'd already cause them a little bit of panic. 500,000. You just file tax appeals, it would cause a lot of problems, right? So there's ways you can sort of gum up the system, but ultimately what you really want is the hard power stuff. And the hard power stuff, federalism is not going to work. Why do people promise federalism? It's because they don't have to deliver, right? And it's something that says to you, you don't have to do anything. You can just sit at home, and you don't have to have awkward conversations. You just say, why don't we all get along? And maybe we can do federalism. Like, maybe we just let everyone have a little bit more control. I mean, this is hippy-dippy bullshit. And how are you going to pass it? How are you going to get a 2/3 majority to agree to this? The vast majority of the political elite enjoy centralization, because there are a large number of oligarchs who enjoy privileged access to to corrupt relationships with what is going on? Oh, sorry, I'm reading the chat and then getting distracted. Yeah, no, it's very frustrating. I mean, like, Cape independence is a big thing. You can get a lot, even if you don't achieve Cape independence. You can achieve a great deal of provincial autonomy simply by removing the DA's majority in the province. Because anyone who invites the ANC in to come and govern the Western Cape, like, they would be dead in, like, no one would support them. It's like, why would you put the ANC in charge of it? Willingly put the ANC in charge of the Western Cape? I don't know. Maybe the DA are deranged enough to believe that that's a good idea. it frightens me to think, but that it's a possibility. But why not? I don't think they would, but it's not impossible. I think, look, the strategy over here is that the realistic marker of success for Cape independence is in 2029 getting 10% of the vote. That's actually the serious one. That would be the really serious sort of point of victory. The thing is, we don't actually have enough time. We don't have a lot of time. And a lot of people have been reaching out to talking about, Donald Trump. Ooh, maybe he'll help. Ooh, America will come here and help. No, America's not going to help you. We're not important enough. Or rather, we are important enough, but they don't see it that way. Okay, America does not see the value of the Cape of Good Hope as a maritime choke point. They haven't gotten the message yet. Okay, they don't understand that when South Africa collapses, that it's going to take out the whole of the SADC, and consequently throw the entire continent into turmoil. Okay, so they don't understand this. Because their solution at the moment is they're hoping for they're still sort of holding out hope for this position where the DA becomes the dominant party in Parliament, and and then we it's fine. It'll be fine. We don't have to worry about that. They've got other fish to fry in the Middle East and whatever. They've got a war on two fronts at least going on. They've got a Middle East and Eastern Europe war, and they've got to worry about what China's doing. So America is very distracted. They're going to worry about Africa now. They just won a very, very shifty thing to get back control of the Panama Canal, right? That was a tricky enterprise because the Chinese were controlling that thing for a while. The Americans are back. Okay. I don't know how that happened. Sorry, guys. My daughter did secede. Yes. No, it's I don't know. I'm with Frogfoot, so it's cock. But yeah. So America's distracted. They're not going to come and save us. We have to fix it ourselves. Problem is, 2029 comes around. This means having a referendum in 2030. I think actually what we need to do is we need to find a way to place pressure on the government before then. And what this means is that we're going to have to stop looking to formal institutions and start looking to new informal institutions. The problem with that is it takes years to build. So there has to be a system of coordination with things like private security, neighborhood watches, and so on. Now, the DA are actually extremely, extremely keen on tamping down on this. They have the US wants Simonstown secured. It's a nice idea, but they don't feel a great sense of urgency. They should feel a great sense of urgency, but they don't. Okay. And it's not their business to do what we tell them to for our interests. Okay. We can offer them a deal and say, well, this is in your interests and will you help us because it's good for you? Sure. But it's not going. You got to remember that once the Americans become involved, it becomes about their business, not about ours. And not only that, but they may not even care enough. We may be very low on the priority list. Do not place your hope in foreign powers. It just doesn't work that way. Okay? That's not how this kind of stuff works. If we want to take control, we have to take control. And what this is going to mean is it means that you're going to have to look at who are the leaders in the private sector, in the civil society, who are showing that they have the iron that it takes. I would say that Some of the people who are very, very good, very bright, very focused on this would be Russell and Bertie and Piet le Roux. It would be Gerard Papenfuss. And like Theo de Jager might have a lot of the characteristics that you need, but I don't know that I think he's too conciliatory. And I think that he's about representing the narrow and specific interest that he signed up for, which is, it's correct. That's his duty. I don't want to, it's not a comment against him. It's just that he doesn't see himself in a revolutionary role at all. People like Harold Papenfuss, however, now that's a guy who's got big hairy balls, and unfortunately he's old. If he was 40, it would be brilliant. But you know, you know, it is what it is. There are very few people who sort of who appear to be very tough, who are also in the public eye and can be used as a rallying point. So people who can sort of say, well, no, actually, we don't like this. We're not going to do that. End of story, you know? And I think, you know, the problem with finding tough people who are streetwise is that most of them are not keen on being in the public and rallying behind political movements or doing anything like that. They're focused on trying to maintain their supply lines. They're focused on trying to secure contracts, trying to make sure that their buildings and businesses are, you know, under their control, and it's very difficult. So getting in control of people who have real iron in them, who have real muscle, who have street smarts and understand this area and would be politically aligned with us, that's difficult. But the important point is that we have to get people have to get started. Pardon me, have to get started, and people who want to move in this have to get focused. Now, from my understanding, there's some sort of interesting wildcard players out there. A friend of mine, Nick Hudson, comes to mind, and I have to have this conversation with him at some point. But, you know, someone like him who's extremely concerned with global control, I have a broader perspective that I see for the next 100 years in South Africa. The Western Cape is vital because there's a coming crisis, a wave of revolutionary violence, and it's gonna be sort of diffuse. It's not going to be like a guillotine falling down. It's going to be like 1,000 whacks from a sjambok. You know, the wave of revolutionary violence is going to come through government policy. It's going to come through public protest. It's going to come through land invasions. It's the same thing that's been happening now, but the temperature turned up to an extraordinary degree. That's coming for us, right? And there's no real one decisive moment, which means that we have to start building. It's tedious and boring, and we don't have the character for it. Older generation is dying out. Younger generation doesn't know what to do. We don't have institutional power or reach or decision-making capabilities, and we're all trying to get out of the country. So the hopes are very slim, right? Because it's millennials and Gen Xers that we have to now rely on, and how many of us are there? You know, of our cohort, we're maybe 4 or 5% of the national population. Okay, we're entering into Jews in Europe territory now. So, the reason I mentioned someone like Nick Hudson is my long-term vision over here is that the Western Cape is actually it's vital. If we want to survive here, we have to have the Western Cape. It can ring-fence capital. It can give people somewhere to flee to and so on. But not everyone, just like not everyone can flee to the United States, not everyone can get into the Western Cape even. They're going to struggle. Because people do not have the same facilities as they did 100 years ago. The cohesiveness of society, the capacity to move as one is not there anymore. So what we're going to have to look at, for example, is now how to rescue settlements in the interior. And for me, the long-term solution to global tyranny, and it's coming, I mean, just the slow accretion of bureaucratic and financial control at a global level means that anyone who is plugged into a formal economy is living at a certain kind of detriment. Okay, so now the slow rolling political revolution that's happening in South Africa will not stop until it is complete. Okay, until there's a decisive finishing of it and then failure. Now, what does Zimbabwe look like today? Okay, we can sit here and go like, oh, no, Zimbabwe is so bad. What is it like to be white in Zimbabwe today? It's actually not bloody bad. You bet. If you can run businesses that don't pay taxes, as long as you do not get politically involved, you are considered by definition outside the political system. You stay outside of politics. You don't interfere with any political decisions or anything like that. You can make money hand over fist. Also, I'm told every white Zimbabwean I've met from over there, it's like, well, business just works. Business just works because it's almost entirely in the black market. It's all informal. It's great. And there's an enormous amount of luxury to be had from just going there and doing ordinary work. And it's actually not as violent or chaotic as South Africa. So in a funny sort of way, being white in Zimbabwe now is better than being white in South Africa now. So it's about, how do you want to ride the waves and be dashed on the rocks, or do you duck under it and come out the other side where everything is, calm? And I'm suggesting that we sit on two sides of the wave. Someone's got to take it in the chest and someone's got to dive underneath and hold their breath for a while. Western Cape has got to try and take it on the chest, which means that we have to go and face a political we have to go into a political confrontation, not a military one, a political confrontation. And we have to organize against the Democratic Alliance. The ANC is not a factor. It's about the DA. It's about organizing against the DA. This is the most important thing. Look, the ANC will never be a factor in the Western Cape. They are to be utterly ignored. You have to go with the people who are your closest obstacle, territory that you can actually capture, and the DA's voter base is territory that you can capture. And that is where you go on with it. For the rest of the country, what happens is you sit in an Azania. Now, an Azania will be terrible, right? It's going to have broken financial markets and what have you. But the seeds of a new subnational political system already exist. And it's sort of like a shield of anarchy that you build by letting the system around you fail and retreating into a system that you build for yourself. So conceive of it this way. Imagine you've got 4 or 5 urban centers, not very big, right, which are controlled by the Solidarity Movement. And let's say we include Orania with this. You now also have a savings and loan bank that you can use for financial transactions. Okay. And this allows you to have your own internal economy. And because you've already got a security system that is functioning outside the rule of law, you can provide security on major trunk roads that allows you to control and even tax, if you so wish, transport. Now, this is where I say this is actually where the future lies. The ideal, using the Cape to salvage as much capital as is possible from the present system to save up for the next system. If the Western Cape then succumbs to demographic destruction, the same way that South Africa does, right? And it's irreversible, simply reunite the two countries and do the same thing as you did up north, right? or don't. I mean, it doesn't matter. The point is, my mic is screwed because I keep bumping the cable, I think. Let me just check that it's actually plugged into the right one. Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, the cable needs to be replaced. It's getting a bit damaged. You only have your toddlers yanking on a piece of electronics once or twice before it sort of loses its character. At any rate, this is my sort of perspective: is that you have the enclave society is much stronger. You can have a greater deal of autonomy living within a sort of collapsed post-state system than you do in a formal state system. You can't wield as much power in the same way because your entire social and political system then becomes. I mean, after I don't know, after EWC, you shouldn't really be seeing white people showing up to vote. They shouldn't be bothering with that, right? Except at local level where they form majorities. And you can do this in the Northern Cape. You can create electoral majorities in the Northern Cape, right? You only need to move, for example, in Kamiesberg, if you move 3,000 white people there, 3,000 voters anyway, you could tip it over. And there's a couple of places like this. And Orania will, in I think 10 years or so, at current growth rate, they will be the majority of their of what's that? I can't remember the name of the municipality they're in, but at the moment they've got a funny sort of relationship with it. They don't really participate in local government there, not in the same way. Creates a bit of a problem. It's going to create a problem. It's going to create a sort of local constitutional crisis, so to speak. But there's lots of different ways you can look at this, and I think that the primary issue over here is that completely abandoning the interior is actually a bad move, because if you're constantly in retreat and you don't have a plan B, and you're always just panic jumping to these things, then as a civilization you're not going to move forward. And this is the thing: is we are a very small burgeoning civilization, and I think people have to stop seeing us as like just an offshoot of the West, right? Afrikaners had the opportunity to be something new, but they weren't willing to make the sacrifice to do it. And it's a strong likelihood that the majority of people in South Africa are not willing to become what we need to become. And part of the reason is that we're attached to the past. And look at this. This is the problem with federalism in a nutshell. Everybody likes it because no one wants to let go of South Africa. They don't want to recognize that it's dead. And it was dead years ago. It was mortally wounded in 1922 in my analysis anyway. When we decided that actually we aren't a white community with some, native enclaves, right? We are a multiracial society. And the Afrikaner nationalists tried to reverse this and go back to what South Africa promised to be in 1910, and which it very quickly betrayed. But it's not possible. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't go back to being something that is not. You can't, right? We are never going to be the Rainbow Nation again. We are never going to be a white South Africa again. We are never going to be the Boer Republics again. Those things do not exist and will never happen again. They are gone, okay? And this is something you have to accept. Your schools, your Model C schools are gone. Your universities are gone. You build these things again from scratch because there's no other option. If you get Cape independence and you have, if you have Cape independence, you do create something new, right? Potentially. But you could also be just, rerunning South Africa again with a time delay. These are the risks. These are very genuine risks. The only way you could retake institutions here is if you took control of the state. And the only state implements you could take control of would be a new Cape, independent Cape. the current trajectory of all institutions in South Africa is set. It is not going to reverse, because you can talk about how work is being put away at an international level. Yeah, it's, I don't know what to say. So my sorry, I just got distracted by something stupid. I have to regather my thought. Something new? Forget South Africa. There's this whole distinction between nationalism and patriotism. And there's a lot of overlap between the two of them. But you can be a nationalist who's not a patriot. And that's because your nation isn't represented in the state. And that's how I see it. Is, not that we're coherently a nation either. We never sort of sat around long enough to form a new. I mean, you can be a Boer nationalist, but what if you're an English South African? Where the fuck do you fit in? Right? And so the thing about moving to the future is you just got to look at these people who are voting for the DA and realize they're stuck in the past. They're stuck in 1995, 96, 94, 98, wherever. They've never, ever changed. They're still hoping that they can drag South Africa back to what we were lied about. What they lied to us was the reality, okay? This was a false promise. The ANC, even at the time they were promising the new South Africa, did not believe in that new South Africa. You can read their own bloody documents, right? And the second that Nelson Mandela, in 97 already, Mandela himself in a speech written by Mbeki at the Mafeking conference, saying, no, process of redress and pulling you out of every single place that we can find you, unplugging you. And this is the thing. People are stubborn. They don't want to go along with us because we're unpopular, because we mistreated them. I mean, look, let's not sit here and try and whitewash history and pretend like, we were so nice, right? We were so great. Yeah, you can say we were better than, you could try and make the argument that there were benefits to the order that we imposed as an ethnic group. But you can't pretend to people that we didn't humiliate them in the process. And that humiliation is what sticks. So, yeah, I mean, it's not about guilt. It's not about anything like that. It's about having a mentality where you stop trying to defend your past and you stop feeling guilty for the past and you just leave it, right? It's when you're examining it, you're doing an autopsy. These things are dead. You are doing an autopsy, right? You want to figure out what went wrong. You got to know what lessons you're trying to learn. Okay, you want to understand how power functions. You can examine the past for that. But when you want to understand the present, you're stuck with the present, and the present is full of people who are stuck in the past. And so in order to find a way forward, you're going to have to kind of ignore large swathes of what people are doing and look outside of them for something else. Because people want to go for what options are already on the menu. They don't even think about leaving the restaurant. So this is the thing, is you've got to start, if they're serving if there's no meat on the menu, what are you doing in a vegan restaurant looking for meat? It's not there. Go somewhere else. And parliamentary politics are it. If you want to have more of the same, you can vote for the DA, and it'll just keep getting worse. Right? And hoping that they're going to sort things out is silly, because look, they are better than the ANC, that's for sure. But they're not going to fix South Africa. South Africa has look at what's going on in the GNU. No one wants to work with the DA. Nobody wants to. Every single party, except for Vryheidsfront Plus, who have disappointed me to a degree that I cannot express. I don't want to talk about it. I'm really angry, unbearably angry. They insist on playing part of this stupid thing called the GNU. They have no effect on anything, none whatsoever. None. They need to get out and commit themselves to Pretoria and to the Western Cape. Partition. There's nothing else. You partition, you take territory, you take powers, you take control. You work with anyone who will work with you to get towards these goals. You do anything that will get you towards this end, because what is coming for you if you do not secure territory, you do not create security, you do not create opportunity and power, is you are going to die. And I mean die. Okay? This is so stupid. It's like it's a disaster. And look, it's going to take 10 years for this shit to hit you. But if you have to live like a rat when you're neon and everyone else is a cat, you're in trouble. You know? I don't know. So you can do the other things you can do for devolving power is you can separate the northern metros. So there's processes for doing it, but it's really hard. I mean, I don't want to lie to anyone and say that there's more than even a 10% chance of success at this, but you have to try, because what the hell else do you have? You have nothing. Okay? Break up Johannesburg by working with Soweto. Sowetan community gets separate from Johannesburg. Then you've got two separate metropolitan voting districts which can vote in a majority party in both. Simple, right? And then Pretoria has Pretoria versus not Pretoria in Tshwane. There's a lot of Tshwane that is not Pretoria. A lot. And the thing is, if you want to get separate, maybe, you know, one of the problems is you have this constitutional obligation for municipal demarcation where they have to be viable. So, I mean, you probably have to make a deal with the judge in some kind of subsequent court battle over this issue, where you offer a certain percentage of the revenue of Pretoria to what's the rump of Tshwane, so that they have enough of a tax ratio. You could probably even do it with Joburg and Soweto, but yeah, I'm thinking that this kind of thing, it's vital. If you can't do it, then you're not going to make it. And, you know, at this point, many of the big people who are looking for change have given up on the interior. But I am thinking that if you do give up on the interior and you don't save like 2 or 3 major towns there, like, I don't know, whatever, it's Nelspruit or Middelburg or Secunda, it doesn't matter, right? If you don't save one of those towns, or Pretoria or something like that, you're in deep shit. Because you cannot survive evacuating those people. The loss of capital is absolutely extraordinary. The economic and social chaos it'll cause is absolutely extraordinary. And people can't move in time. That's not how it works. And the mass influx is also going to politically destabilize the Cape. Like, it may sound nice to say, oh, we're going to have a ton of white people here. Yeah, sure. It'd be great electorally, supposedly, but unless you're the majority, if your influx is so massive that it destabilizes, that it causes people to panic, because people are going to notice how many more new builds are thrown up everywhere and how many white people are moving in. People are going to notice this, right? And it's going to cause problems about whether the colored population are going to skew over to the black side of to the black faction. So all of these things you have to actually think about. everything is just absolute chaos. But it's about, you know, the lie of 16 Patrick Tariq Mallet. Why would I want to read some dribble like this? Isn't this that leftist cuck again? I don't need to have a rerun of my bloody university days. I've heard every bit of horseshit about, oh, you know, this person betrayed that person, and oh, we were so cruel to them and the other. And I know it. Yeah, things happen. I mean, it's never the whole story either, you know, because frankly, if you want to sum up the story of South Africa, it's white man shows up, makes legitimate non-violent deal for territory, okay, settles and negotiates in good faith with the natives for one generation. They start to have problems with people raiding them, stealing, murdering, raping, etc. Then you go over to speak to their chiefs. Excuse me, can we put an end to this, because this is extremely unpleasant, right? And we don't want to have to go to war or anything. And the chief laughs in your face and tells you, yeah, sure, whatever, have fun, but our guys are still going to come by, whatever. So then you have to go by and you have to kill them, because otherwise they're just going to kill your people and pick them off, because that is what people did to each other all over Africa since the dawn of time. What have you captured for your family lately? Oh, a few goats. Oh, that's bullshit. Go out and get me something else. Where's your bride? Have you gotten a bride from the neighboring tribe yet or not? Go show you're a man. So this is how it works. And it still works like this today. Why do people join gangs? You've even got bride kidnapping today still, right? These things still go on. So, livestock theft, bride kidnapping, you know, whatever you're doing, right? So you want to deal with this problem, and it becomes interminable. And so eventually you realize that you have to pacify these people or clear them out of the area. And so that's what people did. And you can look at it whether we're talking about the Great Track or whether you're talking about the early settlement of the Cape, is it always starts out with a legitimate peaceful engagement and ends up being a problem where, I mean, look at the border wars that forced us to pacify the Xhosa. Nobody wanted that land. Okay? But the constant raids into our territory to steal cattle, right? And it was threatening political stability. And because if you can't protect your own people, then you can't control them anymore. So the colony went in and pacified Xhosa and made sure that they couldn't do what they did anymore. Now we're going, and we realized, oh, we're being a bit too mean to you in trying to keep you from hurting us. So now we're going to, because this is the problem, is we wanted their cheap labor as well, while we were treating them as an enemy that we're pacifying. This is not a sensible arrangement. You can't have an enemy that you're holding down, and then also you just sort of let him up to walk around, do work for you every now and again, right? So you know, the migrant labor problem that was decided, what we were going to do, we're going to have infinite migrant labor from 1922. And by the end of South Africa, we absolutely gave up on all forms of border control in 85, after deciding that we we're going to dismantle the color bar back in 1977. And then, and by 1990, you've got no more apartheid laws. In 1994, you've given over the government, right? And now we're under the chief's rule, and we're back in Dingaan's kraal. And we're saying, like, okay, well, if we help you fix everything up and make it nice for you, would you let us stay on and, you know, live here? And they say, yeah, sure. And then they just kick you out, right? And this is the thing, is this is constant sort of like, well, you try to engage nicely and then you betray it. And then you have to be a mean bastard, and people wonder where that came from. Okay? This is just reality. And it's like, yeah, we were mean bastards. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And some people came up with bullshit explanations for why we were mean bastards that had nothing to do with the basic question of security, which is all that matters here. It's a question of security. We are not secure. Our future is not secure. We could have our property confiscated at any time. We could be completely removed from society at any time. if the black population decide to have a hissy fit about something, then we're done for, you know. And yeah, and the truth is, we can defend ourselves, but we are afraid to defend ourselves because we don't want to be the bad guy. That's it. We're afraid to be identified. So we're going to choose to die rather than not be liked. This is the equation people are fucking. This is what everyone's selling you. Is they're saying do nothing, because if you do anything that might change anything, then people won't like you. And who doesn't want to be liked? That's not very nice. You know, you wouldn't want to not be nice. I don't care about nice. I mean, yes, I'm polite as much as I can be, but this is you know, this is our life. This is your life and mine, as Lee Kuan Yew said. You know, not a blimmin' tea party. By the way, Nicholas Breaky in the comments, you are incorrect. While migrant labor was to benefit British capital, the decision to use migrant labor with native reserves was a decision in Natal to provide cheap labor to white farmers in Natal in the 19th century. Separate development is Lord Shepston's policy, and it was then adapted to the national level after the creation of the homelands. And the homelands were created as a solution to the fact that white South Africa, when it was created, the Cape made sense. It was all economically integrated, right? But the Boer republics in Natal were not. So there's this sort of devolved government for natives. And in the Boer republics, they didn't govern the natives at all. They sort of just dealt with them. They made ad hoc deals and treaties and so on, which they enforced. I mean, if you broke the treaty, they'd come in and bliksem you, right? And everyone understood the Afrikaners meant business. So these deals were adhered to, but there was no direct governance of the black man by the white man in the Boer republics. It was a live and let live sort of policy, and huge swathes of those territories were not governed. So when you unite South Africa, all those little Bantustans you see, that's where the black people lived, right? And we're just going to draw a line around that. And they decided, okay, but the population's growing, so we can't just sort of say, okay, well, the areas that are settled by them belong to them. We have to expand it. So they immediately doubled the land area that they were apportioned, and confiscated land from white farmers to give them this land as well. Well, those lines are untidy, so let's confiscate some black land and move some blacks into those areas. And it's a rationalization process where they're sort of saying, well, we don't want to have to directly govern these people. You know, let them have their own affairs. This is kind of the idea, is they don't really want to get too involved. So we sit with this problem now where the black people have taken over the apparatus of the colonial state, and they also sort of leave the traditionally governed areas alone. So they've got black people who live in South Africa, 2/3 of them are something else. They're not traditional Africans. They're not. I mean, there was an essay written about this by Jordan Ngubane back in 1979. He talks about new Africans, right? And there's a sort of guy he's not African anymore. He's black. It's like this difference of identity. This is not the words that Ngubane used, but this is how I see it. Is there's the black identity grows out of the cosmopolitan integration of various African nations within the white economy. And this is a creation. This is an ethnogenesis that has been created by white people out of the migrant labor system. And we are reaping we are sort of reaping the whirlwind, you know. And there's nothing we can do about that because these people are real, and they're 2/3 of they're like about half, not 2/3 of the population, about half the population, these people, and then about a third of the population are, the traditionally governed areas. So half the population are new Africans in Ngubani's literature. And to think of them this way gives you a different idea of what they're about. They are saying that this nation is theirs, every inch of it, and if you are not of them, you are not. They don't recognize you as being part of their community, and they never will. You will always be an outsider. The racial criteria is absolute. Amongst them recognize them this way, the same way as white people do. So the most liberal, progressive white person is still marrying and socializing amongst white people for the most part, and there is still the feeling of otherness. The reason they talk about white privilege instead of just being a South African is because they know that they can't escape their whiteness. They believe in it more so than most other people. Sorry for all of the phlegm. I quit smoking about a week and a half ago, and it's just been yeah. My point is, we're stuck with these new identities that are absolutely racially defined. This is the legacy of apartheid. We're not going to be able to get rid of this. We can't go back. We can only go forward. And the contest for what is South Africa's identity is being won by the new Africans. They're winning it, and they are getting to define what South Africa is. It's going to destroy the country's political economy. It's going to destroy the rule of law, and it's going to dramatically hurt minorities. So this is a system where if you look at federalism and you say, "Oh, here's a lovely cuddly solution," it doesn't work like this. The migrant labor system continues to this day. If you live in the Cape, you know that these settler camps outside of your towns are growing rapidly because farmers are importing a new cohort of workers every single season. Factory owners are importing a new cohort of workers every single season. Okay, some of them legal, some of them illegal. New cohorts all the time, continually. And it's not going to stop without force. None of these people are going to voluntarily give up cheap labor. If someone is addicted to heroin, what are you going to do? Sure, you can say you can wait until rock bottom, but this is different. This is overdose territory. There is no rock bottom before overdose, because everything works great until the second it doesn't and you're done. That's how this goes. And we can't end up living like Jews over here. It's not a life. What I mean by that is being forced to live a precarious, rootless life. It's not. It's no way to. It's no way to live as a community. You have to have some sense of belonging somewhere. And it's harder with the internet and so on, but you can't just have everything erode away forever. It's no good. But anyone who tells you federalism is a solution is barking up the wrong tree. The thing is, even if you get federalism, let's say a magic wand was waved tomorrow and you get federalism, what are you going to do about the fact that our is growing absolutely massively? Hold on, I'm just going to grok something right now. I'm going to ask, what is the ratio What is South Africa's? What is the ratio between South Africa's national debt and its national expenditure? Doing a little thing here. Anyway, where are we? The problem is we're not getting enough revenue. Economy's not growing. Expenditure's not going down. So if you want to, you can't get any more blood out of the people. You can't squeeze any more taxes out of the people because we passed the Laffer curve point, like, 15% of GDP ago, right? We're a small country. Our Laffer curve is low. It's like, 18, 16, 17, 18%, right? That's our Laffer optimum. That's when we're going to get the most out of our economy without crushing it. What remains to be done is to cut money from the state. But let's look at what the DA were willing to do when they were faced with the VAT. I think this is very telling. They're faced with 1% increase in VAT, and they howl about this. Their solution is they saved, I think they found 16 billion in savings. It's like a drop in the bucket. And then they make up the expenditure by increasing the fuel levy and imposing a new tax on medical aid schemes. If you think about this for a minute, they're going to tax medical aid schemes and petrol, and they say like, we're not taxing the VAT, we're just hurting, we're just going to take tax on something that affects the price of all goods, whether they're charged VAT or not. I mean, do you see how stupid this is? Fuel taxes are more pernicious than VAT. VAT has exceptions. Fuel tax doesn't. Fuel tax, it affects the price of every good and service in the entire country. VAT has exceptions like milk and bread and eggs. VAT is actually more progressive than fuel tax. The DA wanted a fucking fuel tax increase. They are not serious people. If you want to fix this, if you want to make it so that we're not going to default on our bloody debt, you're going to want to do a 30% cut in government expenditure. 30%. You just chop that 1/3 right the hell out. That's what you do. Instead, they want to piddle around on the margins. The DA do think you're retards. They absolutely think you're retards. They don't care about explaining themselves. They want to win points. They want to stay in power. They think that winning means that they have places in office. No, winning means you're fixing the problem, because we're not a normal country where, we can play silly status games. We're a country that's dying, or is dead rather, and we've got to survive the decaying corpse. Right? I don't care about the DA's ideology so much. I mean, it's bad and it causes a lot of their short-sightedness, right? But a lot of that's actually due to character, right? The DA refers to them as incrementalism. Incrementally what? Oh, fuck off. No, I think, the ratio is 2-1. 2.17 to 1. Because like the debt to GDP ratio is like, the debt service costs are about 16% now of our expenditure. I mean, it's getting pretty bad. The debt servicing cost can easily reach up towards like 30 or 40% and become completely unsustainable because they're not going down. I mean, all no one loans to us in rands anymore. We got a recent bailout we got a recent loan for infrastructure from the World Bank in dollars. We got an IMF loan in special drawing rights. We got during COVID special drawing rights. I mean, fuck, dude, when you're on special drawing rights, that shit does not inflate ever. You know, that's hard currency. That they denominate your loan in special drawing rights if they don't believe in, you know, they want you really to pay them back. No, we're at the end of the tunnel. We're not getting to borrow money in rands very much anymore. The people are buying our bonds for now, but any kind of express loans that we need are coming out in foreign denominations. And I mean, the returns on South African bonds are pretty good because we're a high risk investment. But that risk is going to increase and increase and increase. You know, and at a certain point, it's going to snap, and people are going to sell these bills. And I think you know, we're going to see that within a decade. Within a decade, absolutely hard deadline is 2035, and it's going to go bust. So I mean, how do you plan for 10 years? I mean, my kids are going to be like 11, 12, 13-ish, sort of. And the economy is going to go tits up. And I've got to... I mean, it's already getting really bad. I don't know what to tell you, but I mean, seriously, if you hear anyone telling you federalism, slap them. They're idiots. They're absolute idiots. There's no way federalism can happen in this country, not in a million years. You break the country apart because it's done. It's dead. You bury this thing. It's been dead for some time. It has just been survived. We have been huffing the fumes. There is nothing left. Okay? Anyway, on that happy note, just yeah, I've got to go do other things. I've been procrastinating now for at least half an hour. Anyway, cheers, guys.